Welcome to In the Zone, your endurance sports podcast presented by Thierry, Bentzen from Jura Sports and Maayke, who isn't here today. But today we have a very special guest from the United States, Blake Bentzen. Welcome to the show, Blake.
Thank you, Thierry. Pleasure to be here.
So we met about a year ago.
Yes.
When you contacted me we have a friend in common, and you contacted me for some coaching. So maybe do you want to tell us a little bit about your background? So where you're from, how old you are, family, maybe work, just sort of the whole setup, and maybe what you did as a kid.
Okay, well, I'm an American, actually from the US. Both my parents are from the US. We moved to Switzerland when I was 18 months old, so pretty much raised in Switzerland. My dad is a big skier, grew up skiing Jackson Hole. So there's always been a lot of sports in our family. I pretty much, being in Switzerland, grew up doing a lot of skiing, played a lot of soccer, did a lot of mountain biking growing up, loved mountain biking, and basically lived there to about 6 years ago, where we moved to the US. We had an opportunity for both my wife and my career. So we moved to just outside of New York, a state called Connecticut, which is basically 55 minutes outside of New York. So I'm in advertising, and I've been in advertising my entire life. So I run a creative department at a medium-sized agency. And I got two young kids. My daughter Chloe's 10, and my younger son Zachary is 8. We're a very active family. We love to ski. We love to do sports. It's really part of our lifestyle to be outdoorsy people, and that includes my wife too. So always sports has been an integral part of me growing up. My parents really, I grew up with 3 brothers, and so my parents really felt it was a great way for us boys to get our energy out and to stay active. So they really encouraged that. So I kind of had that lifestyle. And just, I guess about 2.5 years ago, I started seeing quite a few of my friends getting involved with coaches and, in different disciplines, whether it was tennis, whether it was cycling. And I've always cycled. It was always an intricate part of my life. I used to ride to school as, I think, 2nd grade. I used to ride every day to school and back. So cycling's always been a part of my life. But I realized I was getting to a point where a lot of the reading I was doing and all of my research, and one of the things one of my friends said, I think it's Stu, who basically said, what he liked about training was that having a coach helps you be efficient. It's people like ourselves that are leisurely athletes that just love to go out. You're maybe not making the best use of your time, and especially with 2 young kids, you're very busy. So he suggests reaching out to you, Thierry, and that was really primarily just more like, I got a busy work schedule, I got a busy family life, but sports is an integral part of who I am and needing it. So I think just knowing that I could make much better use of that time so that I have maybe better results felt really interesting to me. So
I think you were the first conversation we had, you were saying you have a good, obviously, cycling history, good fitness, and I think you just wanted to kind of almost, let's say, stay with the same level, let's say, but even reducing the hours. That was really I think you were quite full on at that point and said, look, I'd be just happy to get the same level of fitness but reduce the hours. Let's say if fitness improves, that's a bonus, but just definitely reduce the hours.
Yes, I think that's when I realized was, you're spending a lot of time on the bike, and it didn't always feel, I just didn't see progression. I wasn't evolving as well, or I just was probably just stagnating. So that's where I think for me was very interesting in our conversations. Like, well, we can give you a program that will spend less time on the bike, but you will be in as good or maybe even in better shape, which is proven to be the case. So
when you were riding, when I looked at first at your files, they were very much let's say, similar rides that you were doing throughout the week, right? They were
Yes.
like a couple of hours long,
Yes.
quite hard tempo-ish rides. So did it feel a bit of a shock when we first started and the sort of training I was giving to you?
Yes. I mean, it was, first of all, it was completely different than what I'm used to, right? I think you have this
Yeah,
80-20 philosophy,
exactly.
which, when you don't necessarily have, I mean, I'd
You
done
know
enough.
about it. Yeah.
Exactly. I think it's a knowledge thing. I always was the type of person which would say, you go by feel. You feel great, you push it. You don't feel so great, well, then don't go so hard, right? But it's amazing because when we first started training, I didn't feel like, I was like, I didn't really understand what the objectives were, because I didn't feel I was pushing as hard as I should, right? Initially.
Yeah.
And that's when I started realizing, this 80-20 rule, the importance of recovery. And just the training, just at first I was like, it felt slow, but
Yeah.
I think it was also me having to get used to it
Yeah.
and feeling I should push harder. I mean, the amount of times you told me right at the beginning, Blake, you're pushing too hard. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't think I am. No, you are pushing too hard.
Yeah.
So those are things for me that I had to learn, right? It's not just necessarily how you feel, right? It's like,
Yeah.
it's not just listening to your body. There's a philosophy and there's an approach that.
Yeah, I mean, listening to your body is something very important, but
Yes.
sometimes, people like yourselves, which are, very competitive, have a very strong sporting background, the level of, what you feel is easy is actually
Yes.
it's a way above what it really should be.
Should be,
And
yes.
that's quite often a problem, and you then tend to just push too hard, and then you don't know about it until you kind of fatiguing and you reach that sort of plateau and you don't see progression anymore. And I guess that's a bit where you were already at a very, very good level. And so when we tested initially, you had about 290 FTP, 292, 293, something like that.
Sounds right.
And honestly, I was already seeing some really good results. I introduced you to Zwift. We did a few races there. I mean, just I think it was the tour of Zwift and just a few testing. And then obviously something happened, though we trained for about 3 weeks or a month, something like that.
I think it must have been about a month. Yeah. Until the accident. Yeah.
An accident happened.
Yeah. It was a ski accident, and as you know, it was end of the day, beginning of the season, wasn't necessarily pushing all that hard, but unfortunately had an accident. It was really towards the end of the day, last run of the day, which is unfortunate, but that's what happened. And I unfortunately missed an undulated section on the mountain and had a shoulder injury. I basically broke my collarbone, shattered it basically in 3 very distinct parts. And so unfortunately I had to go and have surgery. So that kind of stopped our training for a little bit. So yeah.
So that was, but not only the shoulder, but it kind of went as well with the nerves to the hand, huh?
You're right. So the nerves to the hand. So unfortunately, and we don't quite know still to this day what happened, but after surgery, about a week after, we realized that I couldn't use my left hand. So my left hand, I had very, very little motion or movement in my hand. So spoke to the doctor, the surgeon, and, it could have happened during surgery or in the accident where one of my nerves was severed or slightly severed. And so what that meant was not just having to go through the whole rehabilitation process of getting my shoulder back in place, but having to basically learn how to use my hand again.
How do you? So what are your thoughts at that time? What were your thoughts in terms of, just let's say not necessarily cycling, but just life in general, and perhaps then cycling as well?
So yeah, no, I mean, it all came through so at first it was, the first reaction for me was that I was supposedly quite sensitive to the sedation. So whatever they put me to sleep with took me 2 hours more than the average person to wake up. So there was this potential understanding, at least on my behalf, that it was more a question of just still being slightly asleep, or at least my arm and hand. But it's only when I spoke to the doctor and the anesthesiologist that they started getting concerned. And to them, it was clear that it was more than just, being fun, that being sensitive to the sedation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's when it started hitting home, when they were like, seeing a surgeon and the anesthesiologist concerned. That's when it sank in, and I was like, whoa, this is serious. Probably a little bit more serious than I had anticipated. So we did a bunch of tests, and very quickly they said that, look, we're not quite sure the extent of the damage. The one thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to rehabilitate your hand and your motion. And initially they put anywhere from six months to a year, because really nerve damage is still, to this day, apparently it's hard to tell how quickly it heals. So they've given me about a 6 months to a year. And so right there and there, I started saying, well, I mean, I'm not going to be able to ride my bike. I can't type. So what does that mean for work? All those kinds of things. And you realize very quickly, as I started doing physio and occupational therapy, you quickly realize how often, even though I'm a right hand, how often you need your left hand. I couldn't even undress or dress myself, which is crazy.
Or carry the kids or
anything, really, and so it really makes you appreciate very quickly, how important it is to be able to use every extremity of your bodies. I mean, even though it was my hand, I mean, I can imagine people with injury with their legs, not being able to walk and stuff like that. So it brought perspective very quickly, and it was very concerning.
But when we talked, I always felt that you were quite positive, when we were talking, and you did recover, fairly well. Actually, the positive of being on the bike is that you could just spin your legs, and without resting too much on your hands, you could
exactly.
So we started to do very easy sessions.
Yes.
I guess it was in February, middle of February, perhaps, or something like that, or maybe end of February.
I think it was towards the end of February. So I got my surgery was on the 2nd of February. I think we gave it a few weeks, right? And then we started very lightly, which was great. Just be able to do something, right? So especially someone like yourself and myself are generally very active most days, right? Even days that we're resting, we're probably doing gardening work or other stuff. But it was really, I think, good for just my own mental sanity, just being able to spin again, feeling like I was doing something, right? So because the first few weeks I couldn't do anything, because my arm had to stay basically in a certain position for healing until I could do any hand motion work with the occupational therapist. So just being able to do just spinning my legs was great. It was really positive.
And the goals, obviously our goals changed, because when you first came, your goal was to be, like we said, reduce the hours, but still be competitive at your local race, which is the WNR, the Wednesday night ride. And now that you had this injury, we're on the comeback trail. I mean, the goal completely changes. And I think we test again. I think you're back on the bike. You're good again to kind of put some hard efforts. And we test again in March, and you're down to 270 something FTP. So still very good level, but not the same thing. So the goals do change a little bit, but somehow very quickly you're able to gain form again. Maybe you want to as well speak about that Wednesday night rides that you do.
So so the Wednesday night ride is for anybody that knows, it's a fairly competitive ride. It's been around. It's really interesting. The particular region I live in Connecticut, cycling is really popular. And there's this ride that is I would say decent to high level, that's been going on for, I'd say, over 20 years. And it's once a week. It's Wednesday. They meet at a local high school. And it ranges from as low as 15 people to up to 50, 60 people. And people show up at 6 o'clock. Now they've moved it to 5 with COVID and everything. With people working from home, they started. So it's a 35-mile loop. It's up and down. It's kind of a good benchmark for anybody that's a cyclist who's a keen, enthusiastic cyclist. If you can do the loop, as we call it, not get dropped, it's a pretty positive sign that you're let's put it this way, a decent cyclist. So for me, moving over from Switzerland, and as you well know, Thierry, I mean, our region is phenomenal. The roads are great. I mean, you have everything. I was a bit concerned moving to the US that, first of all, the roads are not going to be the same. And then also, finding cycling family community. And what is great is there's such a great community of cyclists here at different levels, but there's an appreciation for it. And it's a great environment. So thanks to Wednesday Night Ride, I quickly realized that was kind of, if I wanted to be a decent cyclist, that I have to basically make it around. So I had a few shockers where I got dropped numerous times at different, but it was a great motivator for me. It was,
for me, my concern when I started coaching you and you talked about these rides is obviously it's like a race, almost a 2-hour race every week.
Yes.
And I was just like, well, how can you integrate that? And I think I had to tell you the concept of, right, this week you're going to start really hard and then drop back. And the next week you're going to, do segments of the race, because if you race that race every week, it's just too hard on your body to recover. That was probably a little bit difficult to get your head around at the beginning.
Yes, it was. It was totally difficult because, you get in a habit of just going all out, or at least as much as you can, or you somewhat pace yourself, knowing the different sections of the ride and where you don't want to get dropped. And so, but it's pretty much a full out race. And yes, it was difficult to, in certain times that you were saying, okay, you don't sit back. And but there's so much about cycling I don't know, and I really felt that a lot of those days at first was a little frustrating, but I knew that I was looking at the long game, right? You got to see it's not the short game. So even though I might not have finished with the first group and I sat with the second group, because the Wednesday Night Ride, when it's a big ride, it breaks up in certain groups. It ends up most likely being 3 groups. So you telling me you can't be with the first group, you have to, in this instance, was tough, but it was good because I've seen the benefit from it now. So
and at the same time, so around April, May, I think that you start. They start around that time, right?
They start about end of March, April, May, right? Just depending on
April, And I think at the same time, I'm introducing you to the Zwift Racing League. So that's a different story.
Oh my gosh!
Tell me about your first, maybe your first Zwift race experience.
It was a shocker. I mean, I think you and I told you. I mean, I couldn't believe the intensity, first of all, and I just got dropped. I just couldn't follow. But it was a great experience. It was challenging, and it showed me very quickly I didn't necessarily have the fitness level quite there for this level of intensity, and very different to Wednesday Night Ride, where there's a certain warm up and then intensity build up, and then it's full. Here it's like there's no warm up. I mean, there is warm up prior,
you do your own warm up.
You have to do your own warm up, but not understanding how it worked. It was brutal. It was really, and really
so
brutal.
you were kind of in the 40s, 50s sort of ranking, right? There's usually about 80, 90 riders in our races, and you were in the sort of,
I think I was higher than that. I don't think I was in the 50s. I think I finished 70, late, far 60s. Out of 80, I was in the top 60.
But that's in the A category, by the way, for those who listen or watch. It's A category on the Zwift Racing League. We were in the A2 division, still always the EMEA. well, now it's the MEA North or whatever it was back in the days. But yeah, it took me a while as well to get the hang of it. So, but yeah, I could see you struggle, but I knew you had it in you to do really well on those races. But it's just that learning curve of learning the race, it's another animal really, the Swiss Racing League.
Completely.
And on top of that, you had the Swift Racing League, and that, which was great because the next day it forced you to take the WNR a lot easier.
Yes, well, because I just didn't have it in me,
Exactly.
right? So I think, I mean, I think that was probably smart on your behalf as part of a way to kind of get me to a place where I knew the next day I couldn't really give it my all. And in instances where they might be a break, and you kind of, based on your coaching and that particular training for that day, sit back, I think was really influential in helping me stick with the training, right? And not wanting to push it harder because I just didn't have anything in me because I was already shot.
Yeah. And so comes the summer, and actually I just wanted to highlight one big highlight of the summer. You did one very, very big ride. Tell us about it. I think you know which one I mean.
Yeah, the Ventoux. Yeah. So I mean, you know the area very well. Ventoux is a classic. Anybody who likes cycling, it's got I have a love-hate relationship with that mountain. We love the south of France. We before moving to the US, we used to go down there September period and spend a long weekend or a week up there. So I had a good cycling friend, Canadian cycling by the name of Andy, who at the time was working at CERN, and we cycled a lot together when I was in Switzerland. He had done the Ventoux and said, "Oh, we need to go down there and do it." So I did it a number of years ago and loved it. And then he said, "You should do the Cinglé." And so I did it, and it was the longest bike ride I'd ever done, and literally annihilated me. But it opened my eyes to just, first of all, what you can push your body to do. One, it's beautiful out there. It was a time of year where September, it's not too crazy. There's not too many tourists. So it was really nice. So we happened to go down there this past summer because it was my mother-in-law's 70th, not far from Ventoux. And always in the back of my head, I said, I'd love to do it with a little bit more training, being a little bit better in shape than when I did do it. So I happened to have a window that particular week I was there. I got up super early, jumped in the car, drove there because it was about a 30-40 minute drive from where we were staying. And I think I started climbing as a 6. And the objective was to do 2 because I didn't know if I could fit in 3 because we had family plans that afternoon. But I'd actually done better than I had anticipated the first 2 climbs. And so I said, heck with it, let me just do 3. And I did it. And it was an amazing, really amazing in the sense that I felt so much better doing it. I was in so much better shape. I think your training, your prep, just in general, from a cycling perspective and conditioning standpoint. So it was a really just fun thing for me to do, but also proving to me that, I am getting better even at my age, and there's still new goals that you can set. And so, just really, really fun thing. And I really encourage anybody to do it because it's
quite remarkable when you think about it, because in, February you get the surgery.
Yes.
And here you are in July doing 3 climbs of the Ventoux. It's just that in itself is like, well, that's a success story. But then fast forward now another few months, and now that's the Zwift Racing League starts again end of September. So during the summer, after the summer, you were kind of doing the WNR, which was really actually our goal. And really was kind of back end of the summer, perform well, and you had some good results at the WNR. You had some good races.
Some really good races. I mean, I think things were all falling into place by then, right? We did the Ventoux. You got me into a very, very, really great training regime. I'd say overall pretty consistent with sticking to it. And I started now seeing, after all the work that, getting me to a good place, right? But also continuing my development, working on areas that I'd never worked on, that you had spotted and helped me train. So I started really, really standing out at Wednesday Night Ride. Always been the first group, some of the top riders. You know, there's some guys that are, I have to say, very, very strong. So being able to even keep up with some of these guys,
Yeah.
I don't think I would have been able to do it had it not been for this training, right? This other approach to training. So super happy with my results. Just basically surprised myself that I could do that, right?
So we had basically, you know, succeeded in terms of you've reduced your hours and you're actually performing better at the WNR. With that was the goal. So you know, I think we actually both exceeded the expectations, because reducing hours and then improving is, you know, that was quite tough.
Which was amazing. And I honestly, Thierry, I mean, you know, when we initially talked after my surgery, was just be able to get back to a level that I could enjoy Wednesday Night Ride. It was never a discussion to be top and you know, from week to week, just, you know, the times where I could go all out, you know, be with some of the top riders there, is, you know, really succeeded my expectations, you know.
And then that was the Wednesday Night Ride, which ended sort of, well, kind of
about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. So
October.
October. But at the same time, the Zwift Racing League, the new season started, and that's where you just went just to another planet. Really, it's just a different galaxy, I would say.
Yeah, you know,
what happened?
I honestly, I think, you know, it's again, I think there are two things really for me that stood out for this, or maybe even three things. One, I think that just the importance of sticking to training, right? I think for me, your training, but also what you did for me as well was nutrition. I think being able to get the nutrition right, the recovery right, right? Those were things that really came into it. And I've been really working on the sleep too, trying to consistently get the same amount of sleep systematically, where I think prior to, you know, I thought I had a key on just nutrition, but I think you gave me and Pasha a really good kind of breakdown of the importance of nutrition with working out. Not just while, you know, you're exercising, but also, you know, recovery, you know, and how nutrition has a big part on that. So I think just kind of sticking to what you gave me from a training perspective, but also, you know, just a nutritional standpoint, I think were really key in helping me recover.
Well, yeah, you're fueling the workouts, right?
Yes.
You know, it's all about that before, during, and after.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think you went from just doing a bit of whatever, go by feel, probably some water and electrolytes, being a bit scared of the carbs, of the sugar, to
sugar.
I'm actually now priming you are priming yourself to perform.
Yes.
It's not about just going around the loop. It's about performance now.
Performance. Now, it was very much about getting the right amount of just fueling prior. I think that was super important. And during, I basically I'd have maybe one electrolyte drink, and maybe the rest would be water. And then now I'm fueling with two electrolyte drinks. You know, I'm not using water and during the WNR. And I already saw there make a huge difference, but also seeing a difference with how eating, you know, prior and what I was eating before, and during too, what type of drinks I was taking, what type of food I was eating. You know, you told me about and I still do it, not less now, but I was doing it a lot during the WNR, was the radish, is it radish juice? The
beetroot juice. Yeah.
You know, get that little bit of sugar prior, just, you know, a big glass, you know, before your workouts and stuff like that. Even during when I was training, I knew I had a harder workout. Also during the actual workouts, the importance of fueling properly, where it used to be just water, right? And often I would go jump on with just a cup of coffee and water, and that was it, which wasn't necessarily the smartest, really. So those were very, very important for me. And I think also those recovery rides, just those recovering it a certain, clear certain wattage the next day, like these hard efforts, and sticking to that. I saw a huge difference
and
there.
you were also telling me how the way you felt during the day, you just had a lot more energy all of a
lot
sudden.
more energy. Unbelievable. Yeah. So, and I used to drink a lot more coffee, and I'm not drinking enough coffee anymore because I think I'm sleeping, I'm fueling properly. And that's the other thing where I think, the next level, and this is a conversation I'd love to have with you, is like, how do I refine it even more, right? Because I'm seeing such benefits from, fueling properly, training properly too. And these recovery, this 80-20 for me at first was like, okay, let's just see what it is. And it's just proven to me how it makes such the difference,
Yeah. No, absolutely. But I mean, just as for people who are perhaps struggling a bit, in these, for example, on Zwift or the racing, whatever, just to show as well how we did the first TTT in end of September, and you were there on the team, really one of the strongest. I mean, I was hanging on for dear life. I had an Ironman the week before, so I had an excuse.
Oh, yeah, that was crazy.
But you were pulling the team along, like, really strong. And I thought, okay, something's happening. And you had really good watts. But obviously that's a TTT, so we can't really say. And then the week after, you end up, I think I have it here, 17th. So 17th, so kind of your first top 20.
Yeah, first
in the Zwift Racing League.
Yes.
Which course was that? If I pull it up, I don't remember now.
I think it was 3 weeks ago, maybe, or
that was the Watopia figure eight reverse. And I think we saw first that you were doing something like, if I look 17th, you averaged 4.7 watts per kilo.
Yeah.
Boom, for 40 minutes. So straight away, FTP bump, big time.
Yeah.
So I think we were already at something like 310 FTP, something like that.
Yeah, that's what it was prior to that. Yeah.
And then every week we just keep on seeing some improvements. We have, I think, in the 11th place on the 19th of October, then top 10, 9th place. And then finally, last week,
podium
in Yorkshire. To be fair, of course, that I targeted that exactly. But to be fair, you did really well on the sprinter stages as well. But I knew that race, the Yorkshire race, which is just up and down the whole day.
Yeah.
And that was, I told you, that's like a mini WNR.
Yes.
It's like, that's your opportunity. And the funny thing is, if you remember that I said we were surprised how FTP goes to 310, 330, and this goes like, geez, where's this going? And we say next time the goal is to podium on the ZRL.
Yeah.
And here you go, Yorkshire, 3rd spot. Tell us about that race, because and now, by the way, you're at a staggering 354 watts FTP from 270 in March. So incredible. But tell us about a little bit about that race in Yorkshire.
Well, look, I mean, you had said that this is perfect for me. So you gave me the confidence. You said, Blake, with the WNR that you've been doing, it's up and down. This is perfectly for you. So, you would strategically tell me, don't necessarily go for the sprints, the KOM, but, try to finish strong, and so you and I had a few exchanges. And I just felt great that day. I've been feeling great for the last few, months. I feel like I feel like everything's fallen into place. So, I started off with the group. I took off. I felt good. I wanted to make sure my legs were nice and warm prior to the race. So I knew that if there were any breakaways and that's a little bit what concerns you as a rider, in Zwift, it's hard sometimes to anticipate those breaks unless you've studied the course. Or other races, right? But you kind of gave me some good insight there. So I just wanted to stay with that group. But you also told me to be careful because in previous races, I was not necessarily drafting. I wasn't being as smart or strategic. And I think that was some really smart advice. So I made sure to stick with the guys up in front, but also use the drafting as a means to kind of get me through the first few the first few, loops, right? And then, come, I can't really remember, maybe it was the second loop where people really started to break
Yeah.
apart, or maybe even sooner. I can't
I
remember.
think it's the second lap, yeah, already.
I think it was the second lap,
Yeah.
right? And I just kept on telling myself, be smart, don't work too much, stay with the group, help a little bit, but objective was to stay with those guys. And I think we might have been 5 or 6.
I think there was a group of 10. I watched the
right?
stream, yeah, and then there's a moment on that really sharp
climb, which I knew people were gonna just go all out, and so I just told myself, I'm gonna try it. I see if I can keep with these guys, and I managed to stick with them. And so then I think little by little, I mean, I haven't had a chance to go over the whole race, but I think we went from 10 to, I want to say,
I think
4 or 5.
I think at the end of the second loop, there's only 3 of you guys. No,
I think 3 or 4. Yeah,
okay.
And we dropped one guy.
Okay.
And then after the race,
but you made that move, right? So you saw a couple of guys go ahead, and you thought, right, that's my time. I've got to go. So you went.
So we went. Yes, I went, kept with them. But where I think for me the big break towards the end, whereas there's 2 guys, I think we were still 4, but they were really, really strong. And I just didn't know I had what it took. But I said, I got to stick with them. They took off, and then it was me and this other guy. And where I felt very strong was that, because I don't really consider myself a sprinter, in the back of my head, I was like, oh, if I get too close to the end and it comes down to a sprint, I probably don't have what it takes to get there. So I'm going to break out now. So I went all out, or almost all out. I didn't want to burn myself out and just kind of choke, prior. But I started just building my power and just going for it. So I was able to distance myself from the 4th rider. And then little by little, thanks to Zwift, it shows you how many meters the person. So I'm just seeing that, 14, 15, 17.
He's seeing that as well. And that's just,
and he's seeing that as well. And a few times I saw him try to push, and then I was like, okay, I need to keep at this, just keep consistent, strong, keep the watts going. And it broke. And then finally, I think there was, I don't know, there's 10, 12 seconds difference. And that's when I knew I was safe. And that was my objective, was really not to find myself in the sprint. And I think that was, I took advantage of the hill and took advantage of, this last segment, and it made the difference. So that's had I not had the power, I don't think I would have been able to do it. So
it's our first podium for the teams. So third place, in an A category, that's just absolutely fantastic. So
that's great.
Congratulations on that result. It's fantastic. And so that brings you to, that's the 354 FTP that we have today, which is absolutely amazing. And what would you say, kind of getting kind of towards the end here, but what would you say has been the season for you, in summary? Like, what's been, obviously we can, probably talking about next season is another conversation that we should have, and we can keep on dreaming, but we'll first need a bit of a rest, around Christmas, I think. But perhaps your takeaways of this season and everything. And
but I think the takeaways, I think, having had an injury, and especially the situation with my hand, was a big concern. So, just being able to get back to the level that I, wanted to just get back to, then see me, overcome something that was quite challenging and, somewhat concerning, to, being off the bike for a number of months, training less, but more efficiently, and getting to a place I never, ever thought I would be, honestly. I mean, I think it just shows me that, I think, first of all, your outlook has to be positive, right? It's so easy to get discouraged in instances like that, but I think, having the right mindset makes a big difference. I think then really just following a clear strategy in terms of training, right? I think the training, the fueling, like again, it's just aligning all the things that are really going to enhance your performance. If you see yourself get to a really good place, having had a serious injury, and you're being positive about it, and then you're seeing results with your training, and you're just mentally, psychologically, emotionally, physically are feeling good, there's something to be said there. And I think when you're in that place, you only want to just get better. And I told you this, I love riding. I find it so fun. I mean, we do these races. There's a lot of adrenaline. I love the camaraderie between all of us. There's a good sense of community, and those are all things that motivate you, drive you, and it makes you appreciate the fact that you're in good health. And it's, at the end of the day, it's more about the experience rather than anything else. So I've enjoyed the journey of, first of all, surprising myself with never ever expecting to get to the level I am. But now that I'm here, I'm so thankful and appreciative of that process, right? The process of training, the process of meeting you, and the whole training dynamic, which is, I think, so important. You think you understand your body, you live in your body, but how important training is. And, it's given me so much opportunity with still being able to enjoy my family, which family is such an important part. So, training shouldn't take away from the family. And here in this instance, it didn't, right? It's an important part of who I am as a person, but at the same time, to be the person I am, or be the best person I am, I need to do cycling. And it's an important part. Like, if you were taking that equation out, I don't think I'd be as positive or as outgoing person as I am. So it's getting all those things right. And it's just proven to me that, being smart about your training, being able to find somewhat of a balance, because nobody can, having a balanced life is a tough one, right? With young kids and everything, but you can still fit it in, and you can still achieve goals. And it's a great feeling. And once you experience that, you want to maintain that, and you want new goals. Like, now I'd love other goals, right? Never ever expecting this. So
you've shown that really, overcoming this difficulty, this hurdle, this injury, having a serious injury is not the end of the world. You can come back, and you've also shown that we are capable of so much more. We tend to limit ourselves to this number, that thing, whatever. If I had told you you're going to be at 354, to be honest, if I had told myself you'll be at, none of us would have believed it. But we just didn't put any limit. We just went for it, trained hard, got the result, and we show anything is possible. And by having the right rest, you can really push really hard. And again, we are capable of so much more than we think, and that's a fantastic example.
And I think you've hit it right on the head. And I think whilst doing all that, it's still fun, right? It's not taken away. Hard training, some days you get off the bike, you're almost, you fall off the bike and you're just completely, you can hardly walk, and you say, why do I put myself through that? But, at the end of the day, it's, you see the benefits from it, and it's not every single ride that's that way. And you understand an appreciation for the training, but it's got to be fun, right? Exactly. And I think for me, I think a lot of the progression is really that I've really enjoyed doing something different, training differently, right? Meeting new people like yourself and the rest of the guys, and being able to race with them. And also, it's the community, it's everything. So it's all coming together so nicely, and it's fun. So
brilliant. Well, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure, Thierry.
And tomorrow we've got another race. We've got it carries on with only 2 left. But look, Blake, thank you so much for taking the time for this interview. And all the best for the next for the end of the season.
And thank you. You as well. And thank you for everything and all the training. Really appreciate it. All righty.
Cheers.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All the best. Take care. Thank you, Jerry. Ciao.